Welcome, my fellow nightmare enthusiasts, to a place where the veil between reality and the spectral is thin, where shadows whisper secrets, and where the silence is deafening. This is a sanctuary for those who find solace in the unsettling, who find comfort in the darkness. Today we delve into the chilling abyss of abandoned hospitals, those hollow shells where the echoes of suffering linger, and the air hangs heavy with the weight of countless untold stories. We've collected 3 terrifying tales of unexplained noises, each more unsettling than the last, that will leave you questioning the very fabric of reality. Make sure to turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare to be terrified. For tonight, we descend into the abyss where the only escape is through the nightmares. Let the terror begin. Our first tale takes us to the desolate outskirts of a forgotten town where a skeletal structure looms against the unforgiving horizon. This is Mercy Hospital, a place once dedicated to healing, now a sanctuary for shadows and sinister secrets. They say the halls of Mercy are haunted by the restless spirits of those who took their last breath within its walls. And tonight, we meet John, a stoic security guard, tasked with guarding this tomb of memories. John, a man who scoffed at whispers of the supernatural, a man who believed in the cold, hard logic of the tangible world. But tonight, John's beliefs will be challenged, his sanity stretched to the breaking point. It was a night like any other. The wind howled like a banshee outside, rattling the rusted window panes. Rain lashed against the building, a relentless assault on the decaying structure. Inside, John made his rounds, his heavy footsteps the only sound that dared to break the eerie silence. He walked the corridors, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating dust-covered gurneys and rusted medical equipment. Each room held the ghostly remnants of its past, a silent testament to the suffering and despair that had unfolded within these walls. As John reached the 3rd floor, a chill snaked down his spine. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He stopped, his breath catching in his throat, listening intently. Silence. But it wasn't a peaceful silence, it was a silence pregnant with anticipation, a silence that screamed. Then he heard it, faint at first, barely audible above the wind and rain. Footsteps, slow measured footsteps echoing down the hallway. They were coming from the far end of the corridor, approaching steadily. John's blood ran cold. He knew he was alone in the hospital. There shouldn't be anyone else here. His hand trembled as he raised his flashlight, the beam dancing nervously across the peeling paint and water-stained walls. The footsteps grew louder, closer. John's heart pounded in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. He strained to see through the darkness, his flashlight beam illuminating an empty hallway. There was nowhere for anyone to hide, and yet the footsteps continued, relentless, echoing through the desolate halls of Mercy Hospital. John's mind raced, searching for a rational explanation, but there was none. He was trapped in a nightmare, a waking nightmare of unexplained sounds and unseen terror. The footsteps stopped outside the door directly in front of him. John held his breath, his entire body rigid with fear. He could hear the faint sound of breathing on the other side of the door, slow and ragged, like someone gasping for air. The doorknob rattled. John's flashlight clattered to the floor, the batteries scattering, plunging him into darkness. A scream rose in his throat, trapped by the suffocating fear that had him in its grip. Then, silence. Our journey into the heart of darkness continues as we shift our focus to a forgotten medical facility, swallowed by the relentless embrace of nature. Its crumbling facade a grim reminder of its former glory. Here, amidst the overgrown vines and shattered windows, a group of urban explorers seeks to uncover the secrets that lie buried beneath layers of dust and decay. Led by the intrepid and perhaps foolhardy Mark, this group of self-proclaimed paranormal investigators sees abandoned places like this as untapped wells of spectral activity. Armed with cameras, flashlights, and a healthy dose of bravado, they venture into the belly of the beast, oblivious to the horrors that await them. The air inside the medical facility was heavy, stagnant, thick with the smell of decay and the weight of forgotten memories. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, their footsteps echoed through the oppressive silence, the only sound disturbing the unsettling tranquility of the building. They came upon a room, its door hanging precariously from rusted hinges. A faded sign above it read, Operating room, the letters barely visible beneath layers of grime and dust. Inside, a solitary operating table stood in the center of the room, its surface stained a disturbing shade of brown. As they explored further, a sense of unease settled over the group. The light from their flashlights seemed to be swallowed by the darkness, and the shadows seemed to writhe and twist, taking on menacing shapes in the periphery of their vision. "Did you hear that?" whispered Emily, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I heard something." The group fell silent, listening intently. A faint sound like someone whispering reached their ears. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, a low, guttural murmur that sent shivers down their spines. They cautiously approached the source of the whispering, their hearts pounding in their chests. The whispering grew louder, more distinct, and they realized with a growing sense of horror that it wasn't just random sounds, it was voices. Many voices, whispering in unison, their words indecipherable but laced with an unmistakable sense of dread. As they stood there, frozen in terror, the whispers began to morph, twisting and distorting, becoming screams. Agonized, blood-curdling screams that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the building, closing in on them, suffocating them. Panic surged through the group. They stumbled back, their flashlights waving wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the walls. They had to get out, escape this nightmare, but the exit seemed miles away, lost in the labyrinth of corridors and rooms. The screams reached a deafening crescendo, reverberating through the building, shaking the very foundation of the forgotten medical facility. Our final tale of terror takes us deep into the heart of a rural community, where a looming Gothic structure stands shrouded in shadow and whispered rumors. This is Cranbrook Mental Hospital, a place once home to the tortured and the tormented, now a desolate shell haunted by the echoes of its troubled past. Our protagonist tonight is Sarah, a young nurse known for her unwavering composure and her dedication to her patients. Sarah, who had seen more than her fair share of suffering, believed she was immune to fear. But tonight, Sarah's resolve will be tested as she comes face to face with the true horrors that lurk within Cranbrook's decaying walls. It was during the graveyard shift, the quietest and most unsettling time in the hospital, that the disturbances began. The usual hum of fluorescent lights seemed to flicker and dim, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The air grew thick with an almost palpable sense of dread, a coldness that seeped into Sarah's bones. As she made her rounds, checking on the few remaining patients, she couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. Every corner she turned, every darkened room she passed, seemed to hold a hidden presence, unseen eyes peering at her from the shadows. The distant clang of a metal tray, the squeak of a rusty swing in the overgrown courtyard, sounds easily dismissed as the old building settling. But as the night wore on, the noises grew more persistent, more deliberate. A blood-curdling scream, abruptly cut short, echoed from the abandoned wing. The distinct sound of heavy footsteps paced back and forth just outside the door of a room that had been empty for years. A cacophony of whispers and moans seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, weaving tales of madness and suffering. Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest, tried to rationalize the sounds. She reminded herself that old buildings were prone to creaks and groans, that the wind could play tricks on the ear, but deep down, a primal fear began to take root, whispering that these sounds were not of this world. She found herself drawn to the abandoned wing, a place strictly off-limits to staff and patients alike. The air grew noticeably colder as she stepped into the darkened corridor. The stench of decay and the faint, metallic tang of blood hung heavy in the air, sending a shiver down her spine. Room after room stood empty, stripped bare of furniture, their walls adorned with faded, disturbing murals, remnants of the patients who once occupied them. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone, that unseen eyes followed her every move, their gaze heavy with malice. As she reached the end of the corridor, she noticed a single door, slightly ajar. A faint light emanated from within, casting flickering shadows on the opposite wall. Curiosity, mixed with a growing sense of dread, compelled her forward. With a deep breath, Sarah pushed the door open. The room was sparsely furnished, A single bed with restraints, a rusted examination table. But it was the figure seated on the bed that froze her blood in her veins. And so concludes our journey into the heart of darkness, where the echoes of suffering linger and the shadows whisper tales of terror. We've explored the depths of abandoned hospitals, those chilling monuments to human mortality, and confronted the unexplained noises that haunt their desolate halls. If you dared to listen to these tales with the lights out, then you know the delicious thrill of fear, the unsettling feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, we are not alone. Remember, every creak in your house, every whisper of the wind could be a story waiting to be told. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the unknown. If you enjoyed these terrifying tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more spine-chilling stories. Share your own scary experiences in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared. For the nightmares, they are always listening.